Aloha, I'm Eva Andrade. I'm the president and CEO of Hawaii Family Forum. And on this episode of Faith in Politics, we're going to talk about running for public office, voting, and how the Christian community can intersect and make that powerful. So let's chat about that. We're very excited to have this program today because we really want to encourage our viewers to really pay attention during the election process, to really make a difference. And I'm really excited to introduce Pastor Elwin Ahu as our guest on the show today. Pastor Elwin.
Thank you, Eva. Thanks for the invitation.
Pastor Elwin wears a couple of hats, and I'm hoping that as he shares his mana'o today, you'll be able to really hold on to why as Christians it's very important for us to participate in the political process. So let's introduce yourself to the viewers that may not know you. Tell us a little bit about you and your Hawaii ties and all that good stuff.
Boy, born and raised in Honolulu, and actually raised in Pearl City, and went to public schools, ninth grade to Kamehameha School, graduated from there, did my undergrad in college in Iowa, and long story, but ended up back in law school at our University of Hawaii Law School. I got my degree from there and then went into practice, first with Legal Aid Society. I was actually the managing attorney on the island of Molokai. Can you imagine that? That was fun. Came back to Oahu, worked for the Public Defender's Office, then into private practice, and then got appointed to the bench, the district court bench in '94, and then to the circuit court bench in '97. Then in the year 2000, again, another long story, but God tugged on my heart and I had to leave. It was one of those things where I truly believed that the Lord was calling me to leave the judiciary and get involved with pastoral ministry. And that's where I started, and was at a church for 11 years as an executive pastor. Then just recently, 9 years ago, planted a new church called Metro Christian Church, where I now am at, and trying to get my son Brandon to rise up into that role one day soon.
You know, living in Hawaii, it's really exciting to see someone like yourself who, first of all, really held on to this career in law, and then to have the Lord call you to lead and pastor a church. I mean, do you ever find that there's a little bit of a conflict between being a man of the law and a man of the cloth?
Not really. I think there's a lot of intersections. You know, when I began to study for the ministry, I saw that I was actually engaged in the practice of studying law, and I was a trial attorney. And so I needed to convince a jury to advocate for a position and convince them in the end that what I was saying was true. So that's in a litigation sense. And then as a pastor, pretty much the same thing. In fact, when I was preparing one of my sermons, I thought, how do I do this now? All right, well, what's the issue? So we're suffering through some spiritual warfare going on. Okay, so what's the law? Mm-hmm. What's the rule of law? What is the argument in favor of what I'm trying to convince them of? And here's the conclusion, that you need to come to Christ. So Sundays when I would preach, I'm actually giving a jury trial, closing argument to them. And so there's a lot of intersections there. The bottom line, though, is that my heart was always to serve people. Mm-hmm. Again, starting back with the Legal Aid Society, serving people. Getting involved with private practice was because a friend of mine said to me, why are you working for legal aid and public defenders? It's only after you get rich and make a lot of money that you give your time to public service. And I thought, okay, so I tried private practice, but my heart was always being tugged back to public service. And so when I got appointed to the bench, it really sat well with me because I'd like to look at things from a broader scale, from a policy-making perspective, versus just advocating one particular case. That's just how I'm kind of wired.
That's okay, so that probably is why several years ago, you felt called to run for public office. Was that kind of like because that's where you were being led?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different dynamics that went into making that decision. Choosing to run for public office is a big deal. It's not something where you just flip a coin and you go, okay, well, let's do it. Or, well, everybody else is doing it, so let's do it. You know, for me, there was a lot of introspective, I'm looking at and studying what's really happening here. I ran in 2014 with Duke. Duke was running for governor, and I ran for lieutenant governor's spot. And basically, what it was, I was just coming off of a bout with leukemia. So I had a challenge with leukemia in 2012, 2013. Doctor finally pronounced me healed. And one of the actions I had with my doctor at the very last moment, because I felt just overwhelmed that he would say healed, this non-believer. And I said, how do I repay you? I know you're getting insurance money and all that, but how do I repay you? And his response to me was, live. I thought, whoa, that's heavy. And so I wanted to understand, so Lord, what are you asking me to do with my life to live? You're giving me this chance to live. About that same time, the same-sex marriage issue was coming up. I did some testimony at the legislature, the all-nighters and all that. And when the bill finally passed, I thought, okay, is this something that God is asking me to do? I want to serve. People's voices weren't being heard. They gave testimony, but nobody listened. And so those kind of things prompted my heart. Did a personal retreat with my wife. We prayed about it, and we really believed that, the Lord was leading us in this direction. And so we did, and we jumped in.
Now, here in Hawaii, people will see men like yourself, women that are running for office, and they are people of faith. And the people in the community get excited because they know that this person is going to bring something fantastic to the Capitol building. Do you find that there is a conflict sometimes with someone who has deeply held religious convictions and offering themselves up as a public servant?
No, I think it's a good thing. I think a person with a religion for their background, now, I might take some shots for this by saying it, but whatever religion they were raised in, if it taught them good morals and good foundations, good values, I don't see anything wrong with someone having a faith background in a public office. Because what's the alternative?
Right.
Someone with no values? Someone that has a lifestyle where they were raised with do whatever you want and and charge at whatever agenda that you want, versus someone who's been raised understanding that there are boundaries, there are, that are good for you. And there are concepts and truths and principles that you're willing to live by that are good for you as well as the community, So without identifying a particular religion, I think it's good that people have this moral understanding of what is good and what is right. And I think that's lacking today.
I want to quote Pastor Alan Cardenas, who you know, and many of you might not know that he is our board chairman at Hawaii Family Farm. He always says that somebody's BS is going to be leading this state. And before your minds go into that weird place, it's belief system, your belief system. So somebody is going to have a belief system that they're going to bring into public office. And so people with deeply held religious convictions could bring a very powerful thing if they run for office.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to keep you in the past, but let's just go back for a second during this time that you were running for office. The media really beat you and Duke up a lot because of your faith background. Would you do anything differently today? Or would you give advice to someone who may be considering running, or maybe someone that is running that is a strong person of faith?
I think the misperception, and as we've seen, even with current media, how the spin is always placed on any speech or occasion. I don't think it was ever my position. It was never my position. And you can ask Duke the question, but I'm sure he would agree with me that it was never our position to say, we're going to turn this state into only for Christians. That the fifth floor of the state capitol will be reserved for Christians. It was never that at all. But whoever's writing the story or reporting the news can spin it whatever way they want. I think a lot of the Christian population were excited because finally men were willing to stand up, individuals were willing to stand up for what they believed in. And so where they found a consistency in that, they would support that, which is great. And we should. You find the candidate that agrees with your values and you support that.
I know I got excited. I got excited because not only were you and Duke men of integrity, is you guys are both native Hawaiian and you were both judges. So I thought you were bringing a wonderful thing to the state legislature, had you been elected. And I was disappointed that you weren't.
Yeah. What got me excited, again, was to be able to serve and to be able to be there as a voice for people. I remember doing some campaigning on the island of Kauai, and just meet and greet. And I was talking to this one gentleman, kind of an older guy, and he said, "So, why should I vote for you?" And I said, "Well, went over some things," and I said, "I'll tell you what. If I get into the office, I will come back here and look you up and talk to you because I'm very interested in what you feel about this island." And he looked at me and he said, "Nobody ever told me that before." So it's like there was a loss of care for the individual in the long run. And in pastoral ministry, that's what we do, right? It's not just for that Sunday. We're committed for life. And so I think it was an exciting time for me because I knew that Duke and I both shared, as judges, former judges, we like to see big picture.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see the bigger picture before you can decide what to do with this one particular case. Because what you decide to do here is going to affect this.
Right.
But what is that big picture? I think many times we see decisions being made today for the here and now. They move with the movement. They move with the chatter. It's a popularity thing, and that's shaping culture. Versus, okay, so what is going on here? I will use my religious background and beliefs. What is God saying here? That's happening. Now I can make a decision, this and this.
You mentioned earlier the same-sex marriage battle, and Hawaii Family Forum, as you remember, we orchestrated a very large rally at the Capitol. There were thousands and thousands of people that showed up in red shirts. And the motivation and the excitement was, you could feel it. It was like you could cut it through with a knife. People were so excited. But we lost that battle. Do you have a message of hope for people that might feel like every time Christians raise their voice in the community, they're smacked back down? And maybe they're tired of fighting. Do you have a message of hope for them?
Yeah, I think, again, big picture. And I always try to teach our staff and people that I have an opportunity to work with, I say, push back now. Push back and see the whole thing. If I can use Netflix as an example.
Please do.
Because of this COVID thing, you're at home, and I've been eating popcorn every night. My wife and I, we've been just popcorn because we've been binge watching Netflix.
Did you just admit on TV that you binge watch?
We've been binge watching.
So do you.
So you watch television, and like with Netflix something, and then something you just want to fast forward, And with the Netflix program, it fast forwards through frames. If you watch, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So you hold your button down, and you'll see the frames. Sometimes in life, we look at one frame, and we see everything bad happens. Your wife, the wife leaves the husband for his best friend. The daughter gets pregnant in high school. The son is now on drugs. Nobody has a job. COVID-19 hits. And everything happens in that one frame, and we think, oh, shucks. Why watch the rest of the movie? There is the rest of the movie. And for us as believers, if you've read the Bible, we know what the ending is.
Yes.
So regardless of what's happening here, whether it's same-sex marriage or the COVID or have to wear a mask or whatever that is, we're still in this journey that God has already planned out for us. And we know what the ending is. So let's do what we got to do. Whatever that is that the Lord is asking you to do that.
Yeah, I think that's a good reminder, is because, we're not, of course we expect immediate results. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we woke up tomorrow and we had a balanced two-party system in Hawaii and everybody participated in voting? But that's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah.
We need to remember that we have this power that's given to us, by by the risen Jesus Christ
Yeah.
that can get us through anything. We just have to be patient, but we have to stay engaged, right? That's
Yeah.
the important thing.
Yeah, knowing the end doesn't mean we say, okay, well,
Right.
movie's already done, so I can just sit back and just enjoy my popcorn. No, what's different about a Netflix movie and the life that we're living is that God has given us a responsibility. In almost every command, he says, go and make disciples. He didn't say the disciples have already been made, just kind of walk alongside with them.
Right.
But you have a responsibility. You go out and make disciples.
And it's not just the pastor. That's the other thing I hear.
Exactly.
Well, my pastor is not doing this, or my pastor is not preaching this, but the responsibility lies with the butts in the pew. I laugh. I call them bips and bops. The bips are the butts inside the pew, and the bops are the butts outside the pew. We focus a lot on
I
the
get
bips.
it. B-I-P-B-O.
Yeah,
Okay,
bips
okay.
and bops, we focus a lot on the bips. But I think that as Christians, we need to also remember that there are the butts outside the pew that we need to reach too. And in politics in Hawaii, we're never going to make any inroads unless we reach the butts outside the pew. And so there's one thing I'd really like you to address. So the First Amendment of the United States Constitution says this. It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So many times that has been translated to mean that there should be a complete wall of separation between Christianity and public policy. Do you want to address that misinformation?
I don't think you have enough time on this show. It's almost a semester-long course, public policy and religion, in any
Give us
kind of
the
law
Cliff
school.
Notes.
The Cliff Notes, you would have to say Thomas Jefferson. Because Thomas Jefferson, in response to a letter in relation to that provision, actually used the words, there's a wall of separation between the church and the state. But the intent of that letter and the spirit of the letter was not to keep the church out of the state. It was to keep the state out of the church. So it's where the state cannot tell the church how to run their services, what songs to sing, what's in their sermons. I did some work in China, and they have government-sanctioned churches in China. The pastor has to submit his sermon to the government officials for review before he can speak it. That's government intrusion into the free practice of religion. And so Jefferson, as well as what the Constitution is saying, is that the government cannot have any intrusion into the affairs of the state. Doesn't mean the church cannot be a part of policy making. In fact, they had worship services in the nation's capital.
Yes, they did. And they posted their sermons in the public square, so in case people didn't make it to the service, they could read it. I dare you to go and put your sermon, somewhere on CVS's bulletin board.
Yeah, but that's what was the heart and spirit behind it. And so again, you need to take the time to do your research. Read history, and many times in the public square today, history isn't found in the books. History is on Instagram, social media. What is so? Oh, she said.
Isn't that where we get our news?
Oh, exactly. So.
Yeah, in fact, I saw some statistics that a lot of our millennial generation, that's where they get their news, from Facebook and from Twitter. And that's really scary to me, because how you view the news is how you're ultimately going to vote.
Yeah. But, it relates to the comment you made earlier about the bips and the bops.
Yes.
I think we need to spend time with the bips. We need to make sure, as pastors, as leaders, we need to make sure that those who are in the pews, they know their history, that they know their the Christian principles and values, that church isn't just a place you come to get a breather and then you leave for the rest of the week. Church shouldn't be a place where you come and you leave and you go, oh, that felt really good. There needs to be an investment, and that's what discipleship is. It's an investment so that those that are in the pews are becoming students of the master.
And they're the ones that are going to reach the bops.
Yeah, but they're the ones that are also have a responsibility when election time comes up, that they know what their values are. They know what they stand for. See, many times we don't. We don't. And so we look for the one that is, in fact, they said the one that is the tallest candidate usually gets more votes. Mm-hmm. The one that is better looking gets more votes. The one that speaks best gets more votes. As you know, in Hawaii, that didn't work this last election cycle.
Yeah, I don't know. I think everybody was voting.
But people do studies like that because your average voter is not looking at the issues and they don't know what their values are. And so they go along with popularity and stuff. So.
Well, as we start to end this session, I want you to maybe talk about somebody who might, again, be thinking about running for office, or maybe, again, someone that is running for office, and the people in the community that want to support them, because as we've seen in the past with the way voting works, is sometimes the good candidate isn't elected. So give us some hope. I mean, so if the candidate you vote for and support isn't elected, how do we keep them engaged and plugged in?
I think it's a multifaceted thing. One, the voter needs to know, as I said before, the voter needs to know what they stand for, what he or she believes in, what are the basic values that's going to be good, that's going to bring good for the community. You need to know what that is as a voter. On the candidate side, whoever is deciding to run, he or she needs to search their hearts to understand, bottom line, why am I running? Why am I doing this? And it can never be for me, can never be for myself, or here's something that I've always wanted to do. No, the public good has to be at the center of it all. I would like if they're a Christian, because that gives me a little more hope.
Right.
Because Jesus stands at the center of someone's life, and it's not about me. I get disappointed when I hear the identity or the title to a public official, servant, where it's changed from public servant to public official now. Well, who's the public official? No. What about the public servant? If you call yourself a public servant, that puts on a whole new persona. I was told when I left the bench to get into ministry, this mentor of mine said, before you make any executive decision, you take off the judge's robe and you put on the shepherd's cloak. Mm-hmm. Wow, in my mind, it just changed the whole way I would look at any situation. Not as the executioner or judgment maker, but one as a shepherd. How do I lead best the person who's placed right in front of me? And that should be the heart of every person that runs for office.
Yes. And viewer, the other responsibility we have is if the person that's elected is not the person that we voted for, I really encourage you to build a relationship with them, because sometimes having a good relationship with this candidate and ultimately this elected official could change their life. And in changing their life, they could very well change this state. So thank you for joining us today. Thank you, Pastor Elwin.
Thank you.
And we will be back for a part 2. So mahalo, everybody. Aloha, I'm Eva Andrade. I'm the president of Hawaii Family Forum, and we've been serving Hawaii's faith-based community since 1998. What we do is we provide research and education to the faith-based community to help them understand what's happening at the state capitol and what's happening on the issues that affect the families here in Hawaii. If you would like more information, please visit us on the web. But in the meantime, know that Micah 6:8 says that the Lord requires of us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. And we can help you do that, not only to raise your voice the way that the Lord calls us to raise our voice, but to understand the issues on a scriptural basis. And we'll tell you how you can learn more about what's affecting Hawaii's families. Mahalo.